Thank you for joining A Shark's Perspective, the podcast with subject matter experts in marketing. You know, it seems like that we've been talking about this being the year of mobile ever since the days of Alexander Graham Bell. However, in that time, mobile data has come a long way in its capabilities for matching, targeting, location ad serving, and measurement. And when eyeballs are already on your mobile devices, like for accessing your favorite podcast maybe, then it's easily worth considering mobile data for advertising. Ryan Peters is the VP of Audience Solutions at 4Info and a subject matter expert on mobile data. And on this episode, we'll discuss strategies for how mobile data is changing advertising, as well as ways to take advantage of its capabilities. So let's listen in on your mobile device with info for sharks on this episode of A Shark's Perspective. Thank you, Ryan, so much for joining us today on A Shark's Perspective. I'd like for you first to talk a little bit. Tell us about your career and what brought you into the mobile data industry at 4Info.
Sure. Great to be here, Shark. How I got to the mobile data industry is pretty interesting. I think or at least interesting to me, when I look at what I wanted to do in college, I had no idea. This industry did not exist at all, so there was nothing to study and really prepare me for.
You mean this wasn't your dream when you were a little boy?
Not quite. Nobody goes from wanting to be a fireman and then go straight into a mobile data specialist.
Yeah, you didn't have that great big brick mobile phone and say, when I grow up, this is going to turn into data that we can use to target advertising.
Funny enough, so I always was a little bit interested in the technology. I remember it was 1984. My dad had a Motorola phone installed in his Cadillac, and it was the big box that they had to really bolt into the trunk. It was almost the size of a suitcase, and it was the first one that I had seen ever. And it's now the kind that we laugh at when you see in a movie. People wouldn't even believe that's what cell phones used to look like. But yeah, I guess that did play a weird subconscious role in getting me to where I am today.
Well, you were listening to When Doves Cry, Purple Rain soundtrack in 1984. So,
if only my dad had been that cool to listen to that. I'm sure we were listening to Linda Ronstadt or something.
Well, keep going and tell us how you got to 4Info.
Sure. So when I graduated school, I didn't really know what I wanted to do. Went into finance for a little bit. Quickly became jaded with that. Went into political television, which I actually really loved doing for 3 or 4 years. A roommate of mine at the time actually worked for a consulting house. So I went over there for a little bit, got into research, and then found my way moving to New York, and ended up working for Experian. Did 3 years there selling competitive insights, and it was a great way to track understanding of users through a panel of 10 million different users, so you could see what sites they went to, what keywords they searched for, really get into the collective digital mind of everyone. And from there, the natural step next was to go to Acxiom. Again, I think you're seeing a theme here of it. Pretty much all of these different industries I've touched base with or have worked in really rely on data at some point. Nobody makes financial decisions or does the research and the consulting side without tons of data. So I got to a place where I was a little faster, or the tempo was faster, which I liked in digital, but then still had data and analysis and a way to tell a story that actually made sense to people, and then got them to, really kind of fine-tune their marketing efforts. And 4Info was a partner of ours at Acxiom, and looking across the different partnerships that I helped manage, this is one that I really saw as the future. So I was fortunate enough that they asked me if I'd like to come over and join their team, and it was a very easy yes.
Well, so let's talk about mobile marketing. I mean, if you think about the Stone Ages, back when people used to only use their AOL to dial into their compact computer,
sure,
to where we are now. I mean, that sounds like 100 years ago, and it wasn't relatively that long ago. But talk a little bit about how mobile devices are influencing marketing today.
Sure. I think one of the ways that influence is just because there's really probably an epidemic of cell phone addiction. in America and increasingly worldwide. Anybody who has that feeling that when they leave the house that they don't feel their phone in their pocket and they have to turn around, or you get that kind of anxiety, that's a marketer's dream, right? That everyone's walking around with some device that you can send messages to and get them to look at in a captive audience with very limited screen real estate, and people feel paranoid if they don't have that with them at all times. And you can see from all the different research that's going on, if there's a commercial break, phones are out, and then they stay on when TV comes back. There's all these different cases of, really splitting our life in two. We've got our mobile life, or we're thinking about our next Facebook post or Instagram post, and people are, spending less time in direct conversation with their kids. I see a lot of it, and I say, wow, this is terrible for humanity, but it's, excellently awesome for marketing.
Well, if you want to feel old, all you have to do is stand somewhere, people watching, everybody looking at their phones. And what it will tell you is, one, that they're addicted to their mobile devices, which I am too, and two, that I'm old. So it's just one of those coming of age moments when you're the one staring at everybody else looking at their phones. So
yeah, no, I think it's good that you're self-aware of that, and I think that's also a big problem. Is especially after what we've seen in, say, politics for the last couple of years. If somebody's there and they're alone and they want to look like they're alone, they're waiting for make it look like they're just waiting for their friend to show up, right, at a bar or a restaurant, and instead of actually talking to people who that's why people used to go to bars, was talk to people and meet people and have a drink. Now they're just staring at their phones, and it's this kind of weird dynamic where people are isolating themselves from any kind of happenstance meetings, while at the same time probably looking at things that they're already interested or drawn to, or reading news that they subscribe to a certain side. It's an interesting thing that's helping take the place of other people, which is a really weird dynamic to have with technology.
So let me ask you, has traditional media planning changed because of mobile devices? And what have you seen, with the advertising ecosystem? How has that changed things, or has it?
Yeah, good question. So I think that it definitely has, in that it's one more channel that people have to pay attention to. A lot of people, I think, still look at it, and if I hear it's the year of mobile one more time, I'm going to lose it. But we keep hearing that we've got to be doing something mobile, we've got to be doing something, and people just still don't necessarily know what it is, because they're willing to put money into platforms that aren't giving them data back that help them understand
Agreed.
whether there was a true impact. Can they really tie that back to return on ad spend, or brand awareness, or some other measurable tactic? And then at the same time, the mobile planning, and we see a lot of these agencies right now having separate mobile groups that handle all of that. So we're not getting the cohesive media plan that you would, at one point have. All right, we're going to do all of your digital in one house. There's a convergence of digital and mobile. I don't think they're separate anymore. I think they're just different branches of the same thing. So I worry that people don't pay enough attention to the intricacies and the interplay between the two. And I think maybe that's because people haven't been pushed to have a real multi-channel attribution model. And enough people are happy with last click still, which would never work in any other industry.
Yeah, exactly.
Exactly. So you've got to be able to look at a few different things. And I think a lot of that just comes down to being able to interpret all your different data signals and put them in the same place. So I don't know if that's really changed over the years, or if that's always been a problem, but I'm assuming it's just getting worse.
Yeah, and it's one of these ways. If you ask a lot of people to plan, if you see somebody looking at Facebook on their mobile device and you're thinking about an ad that they see, is it a Facebook strategy or is it a mobile strategy? And you could ask a lot of different marketers today, and they would have completely different answers. And
oh, for sure, yeah.
That's something that's very frustrating when you don't think of it from a holistic way. So then, obviously you're seeing that fragmentation. How do you look at it more holistically by utilizing the data that comes from a mobile device?
Sure. So a couple different ways. I think Number one, depending on your ability to negotiate data back from partners, there's a lot of places that, outside of the duopoly that will give you impression data back on everything that they've served across their network and who they served it to, which if you have a good identity solution, plugs right into that and allows you to fill out that picture of the mobile world. But there's also plenty of other signals. So you can look at location signals. So that's certainly one that people were kind of quick to adopt, drop down, and then is now spiking back up in terms of people looking at it. And I think just because we're starting to see some really efficient panels that are out there that are providing faster data capture across more reach. So we're seeing enough scale at it that we're finally able to use location insights as something more than just an indicator. At the same time, if you've got a CRM system that you can match all those touch points back to, and I'm talking not just in digital, but as you're well aware, addressable TV, anything else you can do, direct mail. So all these places that are now doing digital, that are the Axiom's and the Experience of the world, they all started as direct mail shops. So they know how to measure these things. These are just different channels and different versions of the channels that we're adding on to it. And I think picking a proven methodology that's worked for the last 40 years isn't necessarily disrupted by new technology. It's enhanced by it.
So let's talk a little bit about targeting then. And what's a best practice in location-based targeting, through that predictive insight into where your audience is when you're showing an ad via mobile device?
So when it comes to location-based targeting, very simple, right? Is that it's getting close to dinner time. I'm out with my family, and we've got a Chili's nearby, and I see a Chili's ad. I don't know. Maybe that does make the quick impression on me to say, hey, let's go to Chili's. Where you've really got to think about that targeting and layering on to the location is the type of people that you're going after. So if some people are total, healthy eaters and that's all they ever eat because they're in some Experian or Axiom segment, then maybe you want to suppress those people. I think I've certainly seen location-based advertising that was irrelevant to me. Things that probably would have worked much better for my wife that didn't translate to me as a place I wanted to go, like a European, hair removal spa just wasn't something I was going to sign up for and go visit today. But if you combine the right amounts of data in your target audience and then wait to serve the ads when it's somewhere that they're likely to be, I think that's probably your best bet for conversion on that. At the same time, I also plan out my day. So I encourage people to say, hey, let's not wait until they're right there. Let's see if we can set that into somebody's mind earlier in the day. So I always would say, yep, let's do location, but let's maybe mix that in with some targeting beforehand to plant that seed for people.
So then from an attribution standpoint, when you look at measuring out how those ads were served and the performance of a campaign, what is some of the guidance that you give on best practices with mobile data?
So when it comes to best practices for using location data within mobile, number one, I'd always say try to match it up to sales first and then use location as a proxy for that second. If for people just whatever reason can't tie sales data back to the targeting file. But location is a tricky one because you want to make sure that you've got enough scale that the people that you were able to see actually was representative, right, and statistically significant. I've seen over the years a number of campaigns that had a location segment run against them to see if that was a way that they could do attribution, and it had these tremendous results. I remember there was one that was for a let's say a big box retailer, and they had 17% increase based on this campaign. And it's like, no, they didn't. If that store had a 17% increase in foot traffic, they'd have to call the fire marshal. But it would just be too many, And I think we see a lot of crazy results, and you've got to look at clients, and clients have to do a really good job of pushing back against this and saying, yeah, that's right. There's no way that we could have had that many people come in. It certainly didn't reflect it in sales. As a brand, I'd say if you sent me 17% more traffic, why didn't I see a correlation in my sales data of roughly 17% more during that time period. Um, and I think a lot of that came from the fact that people were extrapolating data based on, we saw 8 visits from the test group. And then they said, well, if you multiply that out by the population, then that's how you get to these crazy numbers that you can't really justify when it comes down to the science of it. So if your location study partner has, a team of 50 data scientists on it, what exactly are they all doing? Are they creating some kind of formula that's going to extrapolate those numbers? And how far from reality is that? And I think people need to feel free to ask those questions. How do you extrapolate it? How many real visitors did you see? And those are okay questions. People don't push back enough.
Talk a little bit about, if you will, why mobile data is better than some other types of data for matches. I mean, IP, cookies, we have a lot of different options for accuracy. What makes mobile a better matchable solution, to bump up? Because you're going to need a match for your targeting against some CRM list, or the same with sales data. Why is mobile a good option as a data source?
With mobile data, we're looking at, especially you talked about match rates. Why is this a better process for it? So we take the way 4Info does it, and this is in our patent, so it's not a black box. It's a cool thing. You can go to Google Patents, type it up, and brings up the diagram of everything, how we do it, because we believe in transparency. But the short answer about that is that we take the household that we've determined through the device's GPS coordinates. We can then match that to physical household address, which overlays very nicely with the Axioms and the Experians and the Polks of the world, because all of their data is at the home address, right? So now we've got the 2 most persistent things in your life that we're matching: your home address and your device. And these are things that have really long refresh cycles, right? Like, average person moves once every 7 years. People get a new device every couple of years. Compare that to cookies or to IP addresses, which decay, or IP addresses get refreshed. That's going to be a really big game changer in the match rates that you can get against your customers. And because there's no resolution to a cookie, there's no resolution to an email address in the way that we do it. Although we can, we have multiple options just like everybody else. But I think the way that you can match the devices to households is going to give you a superior match result. And the most important for that, is targeting. And then the secondary most important part of that is being able to measure off that, because having those same 2 keys and not having one of them disappear while the campaign is in process is crucial.
So then let me ask you about using mobile data. What type of campaign do you feel that it is most complementary of? I mean, you and I know each other initially through TV.
Mm-hmm.
Where at least are you seeing the biggest pop as using mobile data to be part of X campaign? Where do you see the smart advertisers and players really seeing a huge lift using mobile data?
So I think the ones who are most effective at this are the ones who are willing to test and learn. And by test, I don't mean what can we do with a $20,000 budget, because you've got to have the scale to really go out and measure a campaign, right? And reach is most critical for that. So it's be willing to start with a big enough budget. When you look at that, you go to something like financial services, CPG. Our company has done over 500 measured mobile campaigns at this point. And so I really see retail having great results. CPG, pharma was one of the ones that I think was the biggest spike that I didn't necessarily anticipate. So some of the targeting out there that they have available with measurement, being able to go out and say, all right, and especially this is back to what I said earlier, but make sure you're not looking at mobile campaigns totally in a silo, right? Because you could have exaggerated or under performed results, especially if it's coming out of an initial test. But where we've seen the biggest lift of anything is in combination with addressable TV. So that's where I would say, keep those 2 combined. And again, why are they so successful from a targeting and measurement standpoint? Both of them are using your home address as the match key. And then being able to say, all right, hey, this is the success we've had with other people, so we already have benchmarks, right? When we've done 300 or 400 CPG case studies and we know what the sales data looks like, we know what it's supposed to look like when the campaign goes right. And if for some reason it doesn't, it's something we can fix very quickly.
Well, especially as you see how many people are moving off of their set-top box at home and watching TV on a mobile device.
Yep, absolutely. And that's just one more reason that it's so critical to have that ability to tie that exposure back across any device and really be able to still tie it back to the same person. And I laughed a couple weeks ago. Somebody at our company said there's plenty of device graphs out there, but what we're really going out there and building is an identity graph. And it's so true. It was a very simple thing, but it was saying, all right, it's not that hard to tie a bunch of devices together at an IP address. But if you don't have any of those telling you that this is, Ryan Peters at 123 Main Street, it's not going to do a whole lot for you.
So Ryan, then let's talk a little bit about mobile data as an option compared to, there's so many people that are selling data options right now. I mean, you've got Acxiom and Experian and Epsilon, which have, similar data backgrounds and reach with X number of households and adults in the U.S. You've got everybody and their brother who's got some sort of data option where they buy a list from companies like Acxiom and Experian and Epsilon. But, if I'm a marketer thinking about a campaign, I want to challenge you. Why should I think of mobile data first as part of that campaign if I'm looking at options in TV and programmatic display and social? Why should I consider mobile data?
Sure. I think, so two different points about that. I'd say I'll answer the why mobile data first. And I think, one of the products that we've launched recently is our predictive location segments. So it's not just saying, and this is where it comes to always push back on your vendors and your agency and whoever's trying to sell you on a certain data, because you really want to understand it because it makes a difference. There are people out there who will say, let's use the brand McDonald's, right? Any cell phone that they've ever seen at a McDonald's goes into this huge bucket of people we want to target because they're McDonald's enthusiasts, right? So when they're like, we can target 500 million devices. Okay, I mean, are there that many people who are McDonald's enthusiasts? I mean, I like a Big Mac. I don't know what it takes to become an enthusiast. So one of the things we did was say, all right, based on people's prior behavior and where we saw them, we're going to say they're likely to go to a McDonald's within the next 30 days. If they don't go, we come back and we analyze that and take them out of the pool and say, you know what, we were wrong on these guys. Let's take a look at the characteristics and redefine the model of what allows people to be called a McDonald's enthusiast. So that's your first thing is, does the scale of the targeting file accurately reflect what your gut tells you about how many people are likely to go somewhere? To your other point about there being multiple data vendors in the marketplace, I think everybody's got a really fair shot at having great data, and I always encourage people to test different data sets. There's a lot of them share the same underpinning data set, so you might not see a big difference, but there are other ones out there who are based on, they've got a really awesome website, but then you look at some of the companies that are a little stodgier, a little older, and they're the ones that have really good data. People just haven't heard as much about them. So the most important thing about all of that, and especially if you're saying, I'm going to do mobile, I'm going to do desktop, I'm going to do addressable TV, is make sure you're using the same data across all of them, because that's inherently going to bias the results that you're going to see if you're using different ones, just because there's different things that go into any kind of extrapolated or modeled data. So if I'm doing a addressable campaign across 2 MVPDs with a mobile extension, make sure that the 2 MVPDs are using data from the same place and that they don't have a cheaper deal with one of them. So one's Experian, one's Acxiom, and then your mobile provider or mobile campaign delivery is from something else, because it's just not going to get you the results that you're looking for in a way that you can test and validate. And I highly encourage people, if there's an opportunity to do this with a vendor, is to go out and really focus on creating a truth set. I think that's going to be a really big thing over the next year or two. We had an opportunity to participate in one where it was us versus another leading onboarding service, and we had the retailer pull, it was I think 30,000 records of the device that they saw an order come in on, and the device that was verified to be their home address shipped to, and we came out pretty far ahead of the other person who participated, and that was great results, and allowing us to see that, wow, it really works, and to really promote this concept of a truth set allows people to go out and say, all right, this is now my way that I can check for the accuracy of campaign providers and people who are going to be executing on my behalf and what the data says.
So then where do you see mobile advertising going, the capabilities, and where would you like to see it? What needs to change? What do you want to see grow even faster?
What is my make advertising great again
Exactly
view of all this? I think that we are going to You're right. So I think we are going to see absolutely a more pared down convergence of all the different channels. We're going to stop breaking it out. I think what's going to help get us there is two different things. So agencies need to stop separating these as totally different channels, not having conversations with each other,
Amen.
Forcing us to, a desktop part of the campaign to go through a trading desk, but because they can't support that in mobile, that can be bought as a managed service somewhere else. Trying to step back and say, hey, there are certain things we know we have to control. What can we control? What do we not care if it's controlled by us specifically as a single holding company? And then also trying to see out there, I think we're going to see a lot of this stuff being brought in-house over the next 2 years. And I think there's going to be a really interesting part of the industry that says, hey, not all of these companies are based in New York City or, San Francisco or Chicago, and that there's big brands headquartered all over the place. And as they bring this technology in-house to develop their own campaigns and their own attribution models so that they don't have to share them with the duopoly and throw Amazon in, the big three, then they're going to want to be able to bring that talent to wherever they are. So I think we're going to see, an increasing kind of diaspora of digital people moving out of the major hubs and, getting into different neighborhoods across America.
Yeah, especially if you think of, some of the biggest data companies in the world are headquartered in Schaumburg, Illinois, and Conway / Little Rock, Arkansas. So
exactly, and I think we're starting to see more people going to Austin and Charlotte and Atlanta, and it will eventually build out. But I think being able to work in digital will be, as ubiquitous as digital advertising is now, everywhere.
Well, Ryan, thank you so much for being on A Shark's Perspective. And if you would tell the audience where they can find out more about you.
Thank you, Shark. If anybody's looking to find out more from me, you can find us at www.4info.com, or feel free to look me up, Ryan Peters at 4info on LinkedIn. Love to chat.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Have a good day.
Absolutely. My pleasure.
So there was my conversation with Ryan Peters, the VP of Audience Solutions at 4info. Let's take a look at 3 key takeaways from that conversation. First, unfortunately, many groups still silo their mobile strategy because they don't have a real multi-channel attribution model. Agencies and advertisers need to stop separating mobile as a completely separate channel. Think more in terms of using it as a holistic strategy. Second, with mobile data, you can leverage using the 2 most persistent things in your life that you're matching: home address and your device. And they have really long refresh cycles compared to cookies and IP addresses. Third, test different data sets. Though whether it's mobile or desktop or addressable TV, just make sure that you're using the same data set across all channels so that you don't inherently bias the results when measuring campaigns. Got a question? Please feel free to find me on LinkedIn or send me an email to kenneth@asharksperspective.com. And thank you so much for taking the time to listen to this show regarding another one of the many components that makes up marketing today. So pick up those mobile devices and join us on the next episode of A Shark's Perspective.